Today we're going to have a look at programming the flight management computer in the Leonardo MD-82 in Microsoft Flight Simulator. So to do this we're going to go and program a flight plan in Little Navmap, so I'll show you a little bit of Little Navmap along the way. And then we'll program it in and see what resources the simulator gives us within the cockpit to figure out the numbers we are going to need to figure out to program the flight management computer properly. Okay, so let's go inside the aeroplane. It's nice and quiet inside the aeroplane. So to begin with, we're going to need to at least get the power on inside the plane, so we've got an FMC to use. So we go overhead in the MD-82 and we go to the APU section and we turn the battery to on, and then we roll the mouse again to lock the on switch. You can see lots of system messages are firing up as the system boots up. We are going to then go over to turn the start pump to on, and then in the APU section in the center we're going to turn the master to start and then back to run. So here's the master switch, so we're going to turn it to start. If you use the mouse wheel it stays there, you don't have to hold the mouse button down. We're waiting for the RPM to increase, there it goes, and then we can roll it back to run and just wait for it to get around to 100%. So while it's doing that, if we go back to the center of the cockpit and look down, you will see power starting to arrive around the place. Actually not quite yet, you can see little bits of power here and there, but if we go back overhead, so too far, go back overhead, so you can see the APU is coming up, you can hear it in the background. Just going to wait for it, and then we're going to switch the bus over. There we go, APU power is now available, so we'll make it available to the aircraft.
Autopilot.
You can see a whole stack of more messages have arrived now. So we'll go back down to where the pilot's sitting, we can turn the master caution off. It's just warning us, yeah, we haven't finished setting the plane up, we know that. You'll see the boot up messages of the operating system on the aircraft appearing, and if we press Control and 2 we get to look at the FMC, and you will see it slowly booting up. Here it comes. It takes a while to boot up. Okay, so there's no point doing anything with it yet because we haven't got a route, but we can at least get it programmed into where we are in the world. So we are at Stansted Airport. We are the yellow aircraft. So the application you are looking at here is Little Navmap, which is a free app you can download off the internet, and it connects directly to Flight Simulator and you can do some wonderful flight planning with it. Okay, so we are at Stansted, and what exact gate are we at? We probably won't need it actually, but okay, let's go into here. So on the FMC, the first thing you're going to do is initialize the position of the aircraft. So you click on pos init, it comes up with this page here. It wants a reference airport. Now whenever you see fields in this FMC, if there are square boxes they are mandatory fields. If you see hyphens they are optional fields, but some of them are useful to put in. So EGSS is the ICAO code for Stansted Airport, so we can program that in and it knows where that is in the world. We could also put our gate in, I'm not going to. But the next thing we need to do is to set the FMC position from the GPS. So we can press a soft key next to that value and it copies it into this area down the bottom. This is called the scratch pad. We can actually type in here. So if I press buttons, you see the letters appearing, and we can delete those that back away. Oops, sorry, wrong button. So I can clear what was in there. So we can select that again, and we can select it into the position the aircraft is, and that's changed the layout of the screen, but it's basically saying okay, we're here. Now we can go and program our route. So if we click at the bottom right on route, that's the same as pressing the RTE button, by the way. It's just when you're first setting it up, it kind of walks you through the first few screens. So notice it already has EGSS in the origin because we programmed it. We could overkey it in here and change it. And we're going to go, let's go and have a look at our route then. So this is we're going to have a quick look at Little Navmap to see what this application can do. So we can right click on an airfield and we can say make that our departure airfield. And it's put it in this list of waypoints. This will become a list in a moment. And where should we fly to? So if we zoom out by rolling the mouse wheel, Let's go up to somewhere in the north of England. Say, how about Newcastle? So right click on Newcastle and make that our destination. So it rubber bands a line for the flight plan so we can see it easily between the departure and the destination. So now what we might want to do, because this is going to be an instrument flight, it's a big jet, so we can go and show the departure procedures for Stansted. So I right clicked on Stansted and I can show the departure procedures and they pop up over here. So say we're inventing this flight plan, we're not really looking at the wind, there's only 2 knots of wind and it's moving around a little bit. So say we were going to take the BKY5R departure on runway 22. So we can right click on that one because we like the look of it, and we can insert it into our flight plan and it becomes a part of the flight plan now. And in the same way we can go back up to Newcastle, can right click on Newcastle and show the arrival procedures for Newcastle. So if we were coming into Newcastle we can look at the standard approach routes and we could say actually that looks like a good one. We can right click and we can insert that into the flight plan. But also we want to say maybe we're going to come in on runway 07, so we can say approach will be ILS into runway 07, and you can see that automatically figures out the missed approach as well. So ILS 07 insert into the flight plan, and there we go. So we've got the basics of a flight plan. So we might want to go via somewhere on the way. So there's a VOR here, GAM. So we'll right click and we'll add VOR Gamston to the flight plan. We don't really need to because it's quite a short route, but this will, pay off when we need to put this into the flight plan later to show you how that works. Okay, so we've got a basic flight plan. So this is what Little Navmap is really great at. So now you can get a nice reading here of the steps of the flight plan, and you can also do nice tricks like an elevation plot. So we've already keyed in 18,000 feet and IFR on previously into Little Navmap, so it remembered it. So you can see that, and you can see the altitude restrictions on this standard approach route into Newcastle, which is quite good to see. And as you are flying the route, the little aeroplane that you see in yellow here will actually move along this plan, and you can see there's a marker moving on the map when I move the mouse along the elevation plot as well. Anyway, let's go back into the aircraft and see how we program this. So EGSS was the ICAO code for Stansted, which is where we are. We're going to EGNT, which is Newcastle. So EGNT, and we put that into the destination box. So it's done that. Okay, we're leaving Stansted on runway 22. Notice these are all hyphenated fields, we don't have to put anything into them. Okay, so that's us done in terms of the basic route. So then we can press the DEP-R button, Departure Arrivals. And we can say at EGSS we are going to depart. Now it already knows runway 22 has been selected, so it's runways on the right and standard instrument departure routes on the left. Now we were using the BKY5R standard instrument departure. So BKY5R, so we just select it. So now we've got both selected, the runway 22 and the BKY5R standard instrument departure. And we can click on route and activate and execute. And that's done it. So that's got it programmed into the aircraft. Notice that it hasn't asked us deliberately about the destination. That's because most flights you're not going to know exactly where you're going to land. You're going to contact air traffic control and then you'll finish programming that mid-flight. But we can do it here just for argument's sake, just to show it. So we can go back into DEP-R, or Departure Arrival. We can go to the index and we can go to EGNT, which is Newcastle, and go to Arrivals into EGNT. Now we can choose ILS runway 7, remember. And now we want to go and look at which standard approach route we'll be using. RIM T1N. And there it is, RIM T1N. If you get more than will fit on the screen, there's a next and previous page that you can use as well. Okay, so we've chosen that. We're not going to worry about transitions today. That's to do with instrument routes, and sometimes you get variations between the same, of the same approach with different transition points. within, or different navigation points in the route basically, but we're not going to worry too much about that. And we'll execute that change. So we've now got our arrival programmed and our departure programmed. So if we go and look in the legs page, we can see all of the legs of that standard instrument departure. If you press next, suddenly you get a route discontinuity appears in the middle of the flight plan. That represents the gap between the end of the departure and the beginning of the approach into Newcastle. So it's this yellow line in the plan. So we have said, actually, we would like to pass over GAM, this VOR, Gamston, along the way. So what we can do is just type in GAM and click on the button next to the discontinuity where the boxes are. Now, it knows there are 3 of these in the world, and it's not sure which one we mean. Typically, it shows the closest one at the top. We'll double check that. If we right click on GAM and show information for the Gamston VOR, it pops up in little nav map and we can see the coordinates, 53 degrees 16 minutes. And that doesn't correspond with any of those. That's really interesting. Have I done that correctly? Is that Gamston? 56.49, it's the other way around, isn't it? 56, it's going to be that one. It's the top one's the closest usually. So for some reason this aircraft, the database is slightly different than the one in Flight Simulator. But it was close enough that we could see, you know, a ballpark. Okay, so if we go next page again, you can still, there is still a discontinuity. So all it's done is inserted GAM and then pushed the discontinuity further on. So we can actually go and delete the discontinuity anyway. We could have done that straight away, but I wanted to show you how to insert a waypoint. If we did want to insert another waypoint, so say we wanted to choose somewhere over the middle of this part of the route, and say if we zoom in far enough, oh, there's no waypoints around where I'm looking, is there? I'm just trying to find one to give you some idea. Here we go, CW08A. So if we add that to our flight plan in little nav map, CW08A. I presume that's a 0. Should we choose a different one just to make sure? CWZ10. So we'll add that one and we'll right click and remove that one. CWZ10. Okay, so that is going to be before GAM. So to insert a waypoint, you can go CWZ10. So we've typed that into the scratch pad. And if we want it in front of an existing waypoint, we click on the button of that waypoint and it will push that waypoint down. So we'll click on GAM, give it a moment. Oh, it's saying it's not in the database. Yeah, so this is what we suspected, that some of these waypoints aren't in this aircraft, which is a bit of a shame actually. Let's go for something else then. So, have we got any others around that it might have? NAPEX. Add waypoint NAPEX. So we'll go NAPEX and we'll put it on top of GAM, and it's done it. And it's introduced a discontinuity after it, but we can just delete that. So we're now going via the end of the SID, then goes to NAPEX, then GAM, then the star into Newcastle. We can execute that change. That's done. And that's pretty much our route, but that's not the end of the story. We've not told the flight management computer much about the aircraft yet. So we can go into init pref, and you see the performance initialization. So we want a cruise altitude, so we'll tell it we're going to fly at 18,000 feet. Now we can either type 18,000 or we can type the flight level. A flight level is basically the altitude in feet divided by 100. So we can type in 180 and click on that and it will understand what we mean, and it said FL 180. Again, square boxes, mandatory fields, fuel and the schedule. If we just try and type in the fuel, now we're going to go a bit sideways before we carry on with this. We want to use the tablet in the aeroplane and we want to do it really easily. So one way of doing it would be to go and press F to get your normal pilot eye view and drag the view round to look at the tablet. If you hold the mouse button down on the power button, the tablet boots up. Now, that's going to be really fiddly, isn't it? Because we're going to have to be pressing Control 2 to go to the tablet, then F, and then drag back to go and look at it each time we want to see it. So what you can do in Microsoft Flight Simulator, and not many people seem to know this, is you can get a view that you're happy with, like that one, where we're looking directly at the tablet, and you can press Control and Alt, and then you can press one of the number keys, so 1 or 2 for example. So then if I am looking somewhere else in the cockpit, so if I press Control and 2, which we know is the predefined view of the FMC, we can then press just the Alt key with a number and it will go to the view we just set up. So Alt and 1 takes us straight back to the tablet. Control and 2 takes us straight back to the FMC. And you can make up as many views as you want across the numbers, you know, of specific things in the aircraft that maybe are supplemental to the built-in views. Okay, so this wants the fuel weight and it's in tons. So if we go back to, I press Alt and 1, which I just configured, we can go into weight and balance and we can see our fuel weight. It's over here, fuel on block, 7,070 kilograms, so 7.07 tons. So we go back to the FMC. Now I'm going to do this wrong on purpose so you see this. 7.07. And now notice it wants 2 numbers. And it will actually tell you burn schedule required, A or N. We're going to use N. I'm not going to get into what it means because you can look that up in the book yourself. 0.07 N. And we type that in. Oops, sorry, clear. /N. We have to do it as it presents it. There we go, 7.1 tons. So now we want the 0 fuel weight. So I'll press Alt and 1 to get the view back over here. The 0 fuel weight is here, ZFW. So 50 tons. Okay? Or 50.9 tons. Well, close enough to 51 tons, isn't it, if you round it up. So it would be 51 tons. So if we go back to Control and 2 to come back here, 51 tons is our 0 fuel weight. Reserves is how many £1,000 of fuel, or how many tons of fuel we want in reserve. We'll say 1. The cost index is actually a formula, but it basically governs how aggressively the aircraft can climb or accelerate. So it's how much fuel it can use, or how wasteful the aircraft can be in terms of completing the route. So it can be anything. Typically you'll see anything between 20 to 50 on like a sim brief chart or a real airline operational flight plan. But you can type in anything up to about 200, I think the limit is. So we'll go for 99 just to prove that we can do it. And 99 goes in. Now those are the mandatory fields for this page. Next we go to the takeoff page. Okay, so something that's really interesting that this page can give you are the V-speeds, or the... Have you noticed when you're rolling down the runway in the big jets, you'll get an annunciation telling you when you can rotate? So those can be calculated. So if we go back to the tablet, and we go and click on the power button once, and you come back in here, and you can go into Performance, and we can get this tablet to calculate our V-speeds for us. So we are at Stansted, which is EGSS. Press enter. So that pulls up in the database and it knows there's several runways and we can click on that to toggle and it's gone to runway 22. We know we're taking off there. And we can put in our takeoff weight again. Now, can you remember our takeoff weight? It was 51 tons, wasn't it? So if we click in there and type in 51,000, enter, because it's 51,000 kilograms, remember. And again, if you've got the temperatures and stuff on the day, you can put them all in. And you can click Calc. And this works it out. It works out your flap settings, and it also works out your V-speeds. So 126, 132, and 141 are the things we need to take care of. 126, 132, 141. So we can go and type in I've forgotten it already. 126, 132, 141. 126 132 and 141. See, it pays to have a piece of paper in front of you to do this. I haven't got one in front of me. And that's done. So then what you can actually do then, you will have noticed during the startup sequence of this aircraft, you can go and program these markers. If you do it after you've done the FMC, it should represent something closer to it. So there you go. Other than that, that's pretty much it. We have programmed the route into the FMC. Now there are some more bits and pieces, but that's the basics. And you will notice now this has come alive. So we can, if we are careful about this, we can change the mode. So this panel here controls this screen. So we can roll it between different views. And we can change the range. So you can see there's our departure out of we put it onto rose mode. There's our departure out of Stansted. If we go to the legs page, you will find there is now a step button. And we can step through the plan. And what it's showing you is the one that is centered here is the third one down. Yeah, you can see it says CTR next to the line that's in the center of the display. So we can keep pressing that. And we can look at our entire route just to make sure it makes sense. MapX, GAM, RIMTOW. RIMTOW is part of the standard instrument, standard approach route into Newcastle. But it's quite clever, isn't it? And there you go. And there's the route into Newcastle. So you can see it says VOR fail because we haven't programmed a VOR. So this is where it all gets quite interesting. Notice that's whizzing around all over the place. What we're going to do, just to show you the VORs and how they work, we're going to go and program in BKY 116.25. So this isn't part of the route, by the way. 116.25. And you will notice now it doesn't say VOR fail anymore, and that's span around like a crazy thing. So that is now pointing towards the VOR station away from us. So the dotted line with the arrow on the end is VOR number 1, and that's VOR number 2. Or sorry, nav radio number 1, and that's nav radio number 2. So you can program 2 at once. So we'll go for 11750 on nav 2 so you can see them both move. 11750. So there we go, nav radio over here. Now if we look down here, the arrow's moving round, it's still moving, look. And you also get a DME. So we can do cross-referencing on the fly in this aircraft because we can point at 2 VOR stations at once and see the distances to each one at the same time. So if this did break for any reason, we had a failure, we can actually carry on with the VOR navigation and do cross-referencing of angles and distances to figure out where we are on a paper chart. But obviously if we've got this working, then that's fine. The various modes this has, so you can see this is the which was that? Sorry, we were in map mode when we were doing that. Oh no, sorry, plan mode. That was plan mode. So if we go backwards, you've got plan mode, map mode, sorry, which you would normally fly in, arc mode, and rose mode. Rose mode has an HSI in the middle of it, a horizontal situation indicator, which is really good for, you know, and it's got the course deviation indicator in the middle of it as well. So it gives you a really good view of where you are in relation to the VOR beam. So if you're using the nav radios with course angles, it will reflect, you know, where you are in relation to that course. So we can see that as we spin this round. So when it's in the middle, when that lines up, there we go. Oh, nearly got it. There we go. So that's the exact direction to that VOR from us. Or sorry, we're pointing from it. Notice there's an arrow away from the end of there. So that's what that means. If we spin it round completely, the arrow will swap to the other side. So both arrows, and now that's 2. That means to the VOR station. So I'm not going to get too far into that. This was supposed to be about the FMC, but it's just nice to see that you can get this view correlating with the route you've programmed. And then obviously during flight you'll see this moving around as you fly through the waypoints, and it's really cool. You can zoom in and out on the range over here so you can get a good view of your route. So there you go. We have programmed a route, we have set the numbers from the tablet, we looked a little bit at custom views, and we've looked a little bit at the nav radio functionality. We're not going to get into too much else on this video, otherwise we could go on for hours. But there you go, that's the MD-82 and the FMC, or the Flight Management Computer for the MD-82 in Microsoft Flight Simulator. And I'll speak to you again soon.